Thank you very much.
Okay, two important points that would be useful in defending Ryerson. Next slide, please. The false accusations are based, the worst that he's accused of is that he responsibility for the residential school system. He never even used the words residential school in any of his writing. There are 3 biographies of him. They're simply not there. Can we carry on? Oh, sorry. This is the accusation that he was responsible. He's now more than the architect. He is instrumental in the design and implementation of the residential school system. And then the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This is the plaque that's still up, and we're trying to get taken down. And it indeed reported that children were subjected to unthinkable abuse and neglect. But the TRC never accused Ryerson of responsibility for it. Indeed, that happened, but it's not him. And the aim of the residential school system was cultural genocide. I think that's a reasonable conclusion, but that wasn't Ryerson's aim. He supported the voluntary schools that were bilingual, day schools, entirely different. And the accusations are just really badly out of whack. Next slide, please. So the non-appearance of the words. Here are the 3 of the biographies that are available on him. And the assistant's 2-volume Life and Letters, that is there. His own story of my life, 614 pages, is available in Project Gutenberg. You can search, and residential schools don't come up. Next slide, please. And then there are 2 doctoral theses done on Ryerson, one at the University of Toronto, one at Oxford, and neither of them have residential schools. They just don't get mentioned. He didn't work on them. He didn't advocate them. And then there is a master's thesis done at the University of Toronto on his correspondence with John A. McDonald, then maybe Mr. John A. McDonald. And so there are letters there. They never mentioned residential schools. They didn't discuss them. They discussed education and getting a decent system for Ontario, the regular school system. That's what they talked about, not about residential schools. Next slide, please. And so where there is discussion about residential schools, such as in this book from a conference held on Indians in North America, again, it discusses residential schools, but Ryerson isn't there because he had nothing to do with residential schools. And I think we have to be very firm about this. It's just a wildly inaccurate accusation. Next slide, please. Now, the term he did use was industrial schools. And this appears in his 1847 letter. Never call it a report, obviously, because it was a handwritten letter, not very long. And he was asked for it. It wasn't on his agenda. He was asked for it by an official at Indian Affairs, and he sent it along. And it does say that the pupils will reside together. And in the TRC report, it said, but he didn't say why. Well, it was obvious why, because they had to be on a farm, and the hours are long in planting and harvesting. And it had to be a successful farm. It had to be a large enough farm to add new buildings. There had to be a dormitory, a kitchen, a dining room, classrooms. They might need accommodation for the teachers there. It had to be a successful farm because one of the things that the pupils was to do the books. In effect, they would all do the books for the farm. Obviously not a substitute for the farmer and the farmer's wife, but they had to learn how to keep books because your farm will fail if you're spending too much money and not bringing it in. And so that was very important. The working day would be long. I don't know who would work out those long hours that he talks about, but Ryerson himself did. He was a farm boy himself, and he did it. But whatever, the pupils who were doing all that work, they would be paid for it, and the money would be put into a trust fund, and it would be given to them on their leaving the school so it could help them set up in farming. and of course the farming that gets described, that gets downgraded in discussions about Ryerson, but in fact, he saw them as becoming prosperous farmers on their own account and overseers of some of the largest farms in Canada. He was looking for success. And he didn't want the word manual labor school. It's interesting that Methodists, Indigenous Methodists, wanted residential schools. They wanted them when the federal government didn't want them. That they thought the day schools weren't doing enough, and a couple were started. And Ryerson didn't really have anything to do with them either. He was busy on his job, and they were doing it. And however, they were not. They didn't work in the long run. They weren't given adequate funding. Next slide, please. So I think that we should be very clear that Ryerson did write in that letter about industrial schools, but they were not the schools that were built by the Indian Affairs. They just weren't. They were so very different. You can see, I mean, he lays it out. There is a curriculum. It's it's a strong curriculum. In the summer there would be field trips. There's music in it. I mean, he sets out an academic program, and there it is. What happened in it? The residential schools that were built had the half-day system, generally speaking. The half-day system meant that the pupils only got schooling half a day. Regular children at regular schools got a day's schooling. But the Indian Affairs residential schools, they wanted to save money on staff, so they made the kids do a lot of the work. And so it meant that they didn't get much schooling. Now, they would do a lot of work in Ryerson's ideas of the industrial school, but they would be paid for it, and it would be farm work. It would be part of their training. It wouldn't be, cleaning up the kitchen and doing those things. Excuse me. So what Ryerson had in mind is very, very different, and I think we have to be firm. It had nothing to do with the residential schools, and the schools he did favor, I think not a one was ever built. I just can't see the pupils were supposed to be paid for their work. Did this happen at any of those schools? I've never heard of it. That pupils were paid. It was really very different. So the third point I want to make is something. New slide, please. Now, the Mississaugas of the credit, and Ryerson, of course, lived with them and kept in touch with some of them. And he very quickly learned, he went in September 1826, that they wanted to have exclusive right to the salmon fishery at the credit in the lake, and they needed a clear title to their land. Ryerson helped them with learning farming. The government had built them some houses, but they needed to build the barns and fences and so on. And they were actually doing very well in that when Ryerson was there. But they had to move away because they could not get clear title. Ryerson worked on it. He met with people. He did it in England. Peter Jones did it and so on. Could not get clear title. And for that reason, they ended up moving out to these Six Nations. But what's interesting now is that the Mississaugas of the credit have actually started in 2015 to try to get compensation for the land that was taken away from them, for which they could not get title. Ryerson worked on their getting title. Other people did too. It didn't happen, and they finally gave up. Next slide, please. So the province of Ontario went into the lawsuit. The class action suit started in 2019, and I don't know the background to all of these treaties and so forth, but it is quite interesting that they started 2015. They started to make a claim. It became a lawsuit in 2019, and just on March the 2nd of this year, the first payment went out, a $30 million payment, to show good faith in settling this claim. And on March 8th, otherwise known as International Women's Day, they offered to pay, I don't know if the payment's actually gone through, but it's more than $100 million in compensation. And it's an enormous swath of land that goes to the Rouge National Urban Park, but it will remain a park, but it's part of the contested land that the Mississauga credit should have been paid for. Next slide, please. I'm just about to wind up now. Okay. The arguments that Ryerson made back in his day are similar to what was made in the claim just filed of this recently, that the fiduciary duty and the honor of the Crown depend upon compensation. That was said recently, and when Ryerson talked about it with the Lieutenant Governor of the time, he said the object I have is to show the amelioration of the condition of the Indians of this province, the importance to both the happiness of the Indian tribes and to the honor of the government. Using similar language because it's the same issue, but Ryerson was saying it 200 years before. And so because the government is finally catching up with what should have been injustices long ignored and should have been. Next slide, please. So, as I said, he made those attempts. They came to nothing. Next slide, please. Now, the sneaking move by Toronto Metropolitan University and the Standing Strong Task Force, here's one of the sneaky things they did. If you look at their part 1 of the Appendix D, it's very favorable to Ryerson. But in part 2, it makes the Indian Act amendments his legacy. Well, how can it be his legacy if he never discussed them and never advocated them? It's just not there. They just, it's creative fiction. Next slide, please. Okay, restore his honor. This is what we're trying to do in the Friends of Egerton Ryerson. We're not trying to get the name back, futile, and they don't deserve it. But Ryerson should be visible on campus. I think a building should be named after him, and use his Indigenous name. You know, Indigenous students want to have a presence there. That should be done, and there should be a page on him on the website and a portrait of Ryerson in a prominent place on the campus. So restore his honor. Let's keep working on it. Thank you.